It is the 4th week of September 1863. Union forces have destroyed Fort Wagner, have occupied Fort Sumter and Moultrieville. In addition, they have deployed their huge parrot gun, the Swamp Angel, in Morris Island. And the Confederates prepare for one last attempt at snatching victory from defeat. None of the sides have military support points left from previous weeks. The Confederates need to push the Union forces in L6 back. And for that task, they have 2 brigades, Walker and Anderson, ready to attack. But they need a substantial number of military support points to activate both units or one of the units to launch 2 attacks. And this is the last turn of the game. There's no tomorrow. And now we roll on the MSP table for both sides. And each side rolled a 6. That means that the Union will have 5 and the Confederates 4 MSPs. And the Confederates will not use the advantage to re-roll the MSP dice. So we move on to the MSP allocation phase. The Union knows that an attack is coming to L6, and that can be from L17 or L16. The Union will activate Vaughan's brigade at L6, and with that activation, the Union can entrench their units there. The Union will also activate their 4 ironclads at S8. And in case that the rebels push out or reduce the Union forces in L6, the Union will also place Strong's brigade in command in order to move more troops to that area. So the Union spent 3 of its 5 MSPs in placing units and formations in command. The Confederates don't have much of a choice, and they will place Anderson and Walker's brigade in command. And that leaves the rebels with 2 MSPs. Now we move on to the operations phase. Go to the first Union impulse. The Union has placed 4 of its ironclads in command, and these ironclads could move into S9, and after receiving any attacks from the minefield obstruction marker, they could bombard Walker's brigade to soften the rebels a little before they move in to attack the Union forces at L6. However, if the Union activates the ironclads first, the rebels in their first impulse can attack the Union forces at L6 that would not be entrenched. But the Union feels that it could withstand one initial attack on L6. So the ironclads will be activated. They move from S8 through S7 and into S9, where there is a level 1 minefield/obstruction Confederate marker. And the mines and obstructions will attack each of the ironclads. Only on an 11 or more will there be any damage on the targeted ironclads. And note that none of the die roll modifiers that appear there apply. So we begin with the Lehigh, and we roll 2d6. The roll is a 7, no effect. Next, the Montauk. Another 7, no effect. Next is the already damaged Patapsco. Yet another 7, no effect. And finally, the damaged Nahant. And the roll is an 8, no effect. Now the Union ironclads will bombard Walker's forces at L17. And the Lehigh will fire on the 4/1 South Carolina. We start with 1 combat factor for the Lehigh plus 3 supporting ironclads, which are not committed. That's plus 4, and -1 because there's a level 1 minefield obstruction marker in the area, for a total die roll modifier of plus 3. The roll is a 7 plus 3, 10, which is higher than double the combat factor of the target unit, which is 8. So the unit is reduced. And now it's the Montauk's turn to fire. The Montauk fires with a total die roll modifier of plus 2. And it will fire at the same unit. This time the unit has a bombardment defensive value of 4. We roll 2d6, and the roll is a 2 plus 2, 4, which is equal to the defensive value of the unit, so the unit is destroyed. Now it's the Patapsco's turn to bombard, and its target is the 3/1 South Carolina, which defends with a bombardment defense of 8. We roll 2d6, a 4 modified to a 5, and that's a no effect. Now it's the Nahant's turn to fire, and it fires with no modification, and it will fire on the Rangers that have a total defense of 2 for bombardment purposes. We roll 2d6. The roll is a 10, and the target is reduced, but it's a 1-step unit, so it is eliminated. And that's the end of the first Union impulse. The Union has 1 MSP left. Now to the first Confederate impulse. After observing the pounding that Walker took from the Union ironclads, the Confederates will activate Anderson's brigade. The brigade will cross R8 into L6, and it will assault the Union units in that area. Each of the sides select a lead unit. The Confederates' die roll modifiers start at 3 for the lead unit's combat factor, plus 7 supporting units, for a total of 10, plus 1 because all the units are from the same formation. We're at 11, but -1 because the units crossed a navigable river. So it's a plus 10 die roll modifier for the rebels. For the Union, we start at 5 for the lead unit's combat factor, plus 4 additional units, and that is 9. So it's a very slim advantage for the Confederates. They have the advantage marker, which they can use to re-roll a low die roll or a high die roll on the Union side. So we roll 2d6 for each of the sides. The rebels rolled a 9 modified to a 19, while the Union rolled a 3 modified to a 12. So the rebels win the fight, and the Union has to sustain 7 casualty points. And of course, the Union does not want to give any ground. So the 6th Connecticut, which is already reduced, a unit from Howell's brigade, is eliminated, and that takes care of 3 casualty points. And now the Yankees also eliminate the already reduced 4th New Hampshire. So 6 of the 7 casualty points have been absorbed, and now the Union has to retreat 1 of the 3 units they have left, and they will retreat the 7th New Hampshire into L7. And that places a -1 commitment marker on the retreated defenders. That's the end of the first Confederate impulse, and we place a -1 commitment marker on Anderson's brigade. So now we move on to the second impulse, and each side has 1 MSP left, and the Confederates still have the advantage. So the Union will now activate Strong's brigade. The stacking rules allow up to 5 units regardless of brigade in an area, so Strong will move 3 of his units into L6. And that, however, places a -1 commitment marker on the units that will affect all Union units in the case of another Confederate attack. The Union has no more military support points, and now we go to the second Confederate impulse. And the Confederates will activate Anderson's brigade once again for another assault on L6. The Confederates begin with a combat factor of 3 for their lead unit, plus 7 for the other units participating in the attack. That's 10, plus 1 because all the units are from the same formation. We're at 11, but a -1 because of the commitment marker. So we're at plus 10 for the Confederates. The Union begins with 6 for the 54th Massachusetts. Then we add 4 for the other Union units, so we're at 10, and -1 because of the commitment marker. The total modifier for the Union is plus 9. Now we roll 2d6 for each of the sides. The rebels roll a 3 modified to a 13, and the Union a 5 modified to a 14. So the Union would win the battle, and the Confederates would have to absorb 1 casualty point. However, the Confederates use the advantage to re-roll their dice. So we roll 2d6, and the roll is a 7 modified to a 17. When compared to the Union 14, the rebels win the fight, but only cause 3 casualty points on the Union forces. And those points will be satisfied by flipping the 9th Maine to its reduced side. And that's the end of the Confederate second impulse. And none of the sides have any MSPs left. So that's the end of the operations phase. So the rebels failed in pushing back the Union forces from L6 and destroying the Swamp Angel. But the game is not over yet. We move on to the end phase and we remove all commitment markers. We still have to go through the random events table. Most of the events have to do with things that would happen in the next turn. However, one of the events has an immediate effect. If a 4 or a 6 is rolled, the Swamp Angel blows up. And that means that the Confederates would win the game because the Union would only have 3 key or victory areas under their control. And because this dice roll is so crucial, I'm going to film the whole thing. So we have our dice tray here, and we're going to roll 2d6 white colored dice, which are neutral for each of the sides. And here we go. Will the Swamp Angel blow up, or will the Union win? We roll 2d6, and the roll is a 9. So the Union wins the game. The Swamp Angel does not blow up. It stays in L6 and counts as 1 victory area, together with L5, Fort Sumter, and Moultrieville. And with 4 victory areas, the Union wins a decisive victory. I was under the impression that they needed 4 areas to win, and the Union has 4 with the Swamp Angel, so they only need 3 areas to win. So the Union really won a long time ago, and now I realize that they needed 4 to win, but it doesn't matter. you saw the whole 11 turns. And if you've been following my channel for the last couple of weeks, and maybe a little bit more, I've been playing this game. I had to restart it because I was doing some things wrong. And my final comments on this game, I like the theme, I like the topic. I think it's a very interesting campaign because you have the combination of naval units and ground units. You have a certain degree of chrome, you have forts, ironclads, mines. You have even the Hunley, which didn't complete its crew training because the Confederates, frankly, don't have enough MSPs to go about. And I had some trouble with some of the rules. For example, the rules concerning activations sometimes don't appear very clear. I realized, and that's how I restarted the game, that you really activate areas that have units. And I also, some of the rules when you retreat units, suppose that you receive a combat result in which your forces lose, and you have to absorb 2 casualty points. So I would retreat 2 units, and then I would retreat more than 2 units so that the whole formation stays together. That part about retreating additional units than called for is not even in the rules, but I applied it because I know that in most games you have that option, and that makes sense because you want to maintain your units together. Otherwise, you have to spend additional MSPs just to be able to regroup or place the units together in one area. One thing that drew some comments, and which I agree with my viewers, is the immense power that the ironclads have vis-a-vis the forts. And you saw at the beginning of the game that Union ironclads bombarded and easily disposed of the lighthouse, which began the game here in L4, and that allowed the Union ironclads to then bombard and destroy Fort Wagner here at L5. So it was quite easy for the ironclads to do so, and I saw the comments that everybody was amazed that the forts, like, they don't fire back when they're being bombarded by the ironclads. But I've read the rules back and forth, and bombardment is an action that the active player takes. And the only rule that I saw where the forts fire back is if infantry units amphibiously assault their area. Then they have one shot at one of the infantry units. But you don't have that kind of interaction that you would expect to have between the forts and the ironclads. I was looking myself for other things that I was doing wrong, and the only thing I can think of which affected the game is that early on I had the Confederates ironclads, which started in the this area here between S7 and S12 is the Charleston Harbor area. They started here and they moved into S6 to attack the Union ironclads, and after they did so, they were easily destroyed in 1 or 2 turns. And the Confederate ironclads are the only naval units they have. And why are the ironclads important? Because at the end of the turn, in the end phase, if you have a situation like this, where you have Union ironclads and minefields in an area and no Confederate naval unit, or meaning ironclad, then the minefield is removed. But if there were at least one Confederate ironclad, even if damaged, the Union ironclads have to return to port. So the Confederate ironclads, just by surviving and occupying some of these sea areas, will considerably delay the advance of the Union naval forces into and through Charleston Harbor. And so that's one thing that I would have done differently. Of course, this is the first time I play the game. And I believe that in this game, it needs a little reworking of the rules, better phrasing of certain things, because I had trouble wrapping my head around some of the concepts. But it's a really interesting campaign, and you can see that the onus of the attack is on the Union, because if you are too laid back as a Union commander, you're going to have these Confederate reinforcements pouring into the map. But of course, you don't know how much you can do in each turn, because the number of military support points is variable. It is kind of counterintuitive in this game that you have to use military support points to place units in command, and then again have to use military support points to activate those same units that you placed in command. So it's kind of something that gave me some difficulty to wrap my head around. Maybe it would have been better just to provide less military support points, and once you place a unit in command, you can conduct the action without having to spend more MSPs. But I mean, that's the way the game is designed. I enjoyed the game. Nevertheless, I would like to see more games on this particular campaign, which is interesting. There's the movie Glory that talks about the assault on Fort Wagner, which is just part of this campaign. And I know there was a battle in the swamps that was pretty substantial. I forget the name of the battle. So this was a campaign that it's a campaign that I haven't seen in any other Civil War game. This is a gate of hell. I want to thank all the viewers who stuck it out for these 11 turns plus the 3 turns that I made before and then I reset. And as I always say, this is Stuka Joe signing off for now. Thanks for watching.